What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to In the Corner. I'm Cash. Today, we've got a very, very exciting episode because today's episode 124. We're going to talk about UFC 324, which takes place on the 24th of January. So a big 24 episode, day, thing, event. A lot of 24s. But anyways, yeah, really, really excited for this weekend of action. This feels like the first big weekend of fights since probably in about a month or so, because not only are you getting Raymond Muratalla versus Andy Cruz, which is a phenomenal lightweight championship in boxing. I'm really excited for that fight. You're getting the return of UFC on Paramount Plus, kicking off with a huge card. I cannot wait for it. And just a little something else, the official debut of Zuffa Boxing, which we've been waiting on. It's been the most talked about thing in boxing for the past 6 months. I'm so curious to see what the product looks like. We've got so much to talk about regarding Zuffa Boxing. Before we get to that, we're going to talk UFC. We're going to talk about Muratalla Cruz. Later on, we're going to talk about Usyk potentially being with Zuffa Boxing. We're going to talk about Deontay Wilder versus Derek Chisora, seemingly in the works. Some stuff about Tyson Fury, Donn Davis leaving the PFL. So much to talk about. Let's start with UFC 324. And yeah, this is the start of a new era. No more pay-per-view. We've been talking about it for a long time. The UFC is finally kicking off on Paramount Plus with a huge one. It is a huge card. Now, it was meant to be bigger. Obviously, we know the plan was to have Ilia Topuria headline this. They were going to have Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes in the co-main event as of until like about a week ago when Kayla Harrison got a very bad neck injury, had to get surgery. So that fight's no longer happening, which sucks because that was the best and biggest fight on the card. We also know there was rumors of apparently they were going to have Rico Verhoeven facing Derek Lewis instead of Waldo Cortez Acosta. So there's definitely been a lot of change-ups to what they were initially wanting to do. You know, kicking off on Paramount Plus with an interim title fight is not the most ideal way to start the new deal. But look, this is still a great numbered event. And 1 week later, we have another one, which I don't know if that's ever really happened before. At least hasn't happened in a very long time. But yeah, having two big cards back-to-back is going to be awesome. But yeah, so let's go ahead and let's talk about this main event. Justin Gaethje, Paddy Pimblett. Very big fight for the lightweight division. A lot of controversy around this fight. Obviously, you have guys like Arman Tsarukyan, who everyone, including myself, believes should be next in line for the title. And here we have an interim title fight where he is not a part of it at all. And you have essentially number 3 versus number 4. Actually, in the rankings, it's number 4 versus number 5. Because, you know, the UFC rankings are already out of whack. But yeah, so we're going to take what we can get. Winner of this is going to fight Ilia. And then poor Arman Tsarukyan is going to have to wait until way later on in the year to actually get his crack at the title. I did think that I was watching the press conference. Obviously, Paddy hates Arman, and Dana does not like Arman either. And it just felt there was a weird energy around all of Arman Tsarukyan. We know he's been on a crazy press run recently, going on all the streams and TikToks and stuff, and his eating. And he's growing on me as I feel like he's growing on everyone. And I hope that can help him get a title shot. But yeah, as for the fight we have, Paddy versus Justin, it's not the fight anybody was necessarily asking for. I think it should be able to deliver in the actual cage. There was a good bit of shit talk at the press conference, which it felt like we hadn't had with this fight. It felt like Paddy's talking about Ilia. He's talking about Arman. Justin's talking about Ilia. Justin's talking about Max and Charles. It felt like neither of them were actually talking about each other. So now that we're actually towards the fight, they're going to start talking some smack, which is good to see, build it up. But as for how I see the fight going, I hadn't really done an in-depth analysis thought of it until it just kind of clicked with me that I think Paddy the Baddy's going to beat him. And I know that may be a controversy. I don't know. I think Paddy's the favorite. And when I say controversial, maybe controversial among like a lot of UFC fanboys, it's just that Justin, he hasn't been active. And I know that necessarily neither is Paddy. I mean, both these guys are actually, the last 2 years, they've only had one fight. Both had one fight in 2024 and one fight in 2025. And I don't think Justin had that many fights in 2023. And Paddy probably didn't have that many either. So we're not really seeing these guys very active. Now, what I will say is that Paddy's had 2 finishes in those years against Bobby Green, which okay, and Michael Chandler, who's solid. Justin Gaethje got knocked out by Max Holloway. No shame in that. And then had a very close win over Rafael Fiziev. So recent form, you do have to give it to Paddy, just in the idea of he had 2 dominant wins as opposed to a knockout loss and a very close decision win. But it's also just kind of mother time. I feel like this this is Paddy's time to shine. This is his kind of big moment, and they're really trying to build him versus Ilya. And I feel like Justin's almost being used here as a stepping stone, but he's definitely a very strong gatekeeper. Like, I'm thinking of this as like a 60-40 kind of fight. I am favoring Paddy. I think that he's just very explosive, and it kind of seemed like Justin's almost underrating Paddy's wrestling, because I feel like he's shown pretty strong wrestling in the last few fights. I don't know. I'm not saying that he wins by wrestling. That's definitely going to have to be his game plan, because you don't want to necessarily stand and bang with Justin Gaethje. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be a very, very fun fight, I think. I don't know if I see it going the distance. I think it's going to be a bloody war. I don't think it goes the distance. And I could really see it going either way, but I'm going to pick Paddy the Baddy. Co-main event, Sean O'Malley. Sugar Sean is back. He's fighting Song Yadong. And this is a really, really important fight for his career. Obviously he's on a 2-fight losing streak. And Song Yadong is a little bit on the rise. Had that no contest with Henry Cejudo, but he was definitely winning that fight. Hasn't had a fight in almost a year. And that's part of the reason why I'm picking Sugar Sean to beat him. I really like Song Yadong. I think he's a really fun fighter to watch. And I think he's going to make it an explosive match in there. But I feel like people have forgotten how good of a striker Sean O'Malley is. I mean, yeah, he lost to Merab, but we know Merab's a beast, except for when he got found out. I wouldn't say found out, but when he got beaten up by Petr Yan, who's now the champ. I think that Sean O'Malley is a very, very good fighter. Now, I don't know if he beats Merab ever. He doesn't. I don't know if he beats Petr Yan again. And I don't know if he beats Umar Nurmagomedov. But I do think that he beats Song Yadong. And I think that he could end up getting a title shot. He could end up getting a rematch with Petr Yan. We know he's a big star. We know the UFC is always going to want to position him for that title. And I think that with a win tomorrow night, he gets it. I really would not be surprised. Also on the card, Waldo Cortez Acosta, Derek Lewis. By the way, I could see Sean O'Malley getting a knockout, but I'm not 100% on it. Anyways, Waldo Cortez Acosta versus Derek Lewis. Look, as much as I love Derek Lewis, again, this just feels a little bit more like new guard versus old guard. And I think that Waldo, he was 4-1 in 2025, the most active fighter on the roster, or at least tied with maybe like Kevin Holland. Really strong year for him. Ended it very strong with a win over Shamil Gaziev. I think that he beats up Derek Lewis. I don't know. I say this, but then again, Derek Lewis, I feel like I've picked against him in his last couple of fights, and he still just kind of finds a way. He's getting up there, but I am picking Waldo Cortez Acosta to beat him, and I think that once Waldo beats him, he's going to enter that title conversation, taking out a legend in Derek Lewis. We'll just have to see, but I don't know, man. I do love Derek Lewis, and I think that one's going to be a lot of fun. Natalia Silva versus Rose Namajunas. Again, I really like Rose Namajunas, but Natalia Silva, I believe she's undefeated in the UFC. She's minus 400 favorite. I think that she goes in there, she wrestles the shit out of Rose Namajunas, and she sets herself up for a title shot versus Valentina Shevchenko. Unanimous decision win. That's just exactly how I see this fight going. I don't think it's going to be particularly exciting to watch, but I think that she wins it and gets the title shot probably next this year. And then opening up the card, who I feel like dominated the press conference with all the questions, Arnold Allen versus John Silva. Obviously, John Silva's a huge star in the UFC, talking about, there's going to be two autistic guys going at it. Great build-up. And look, John Silva's somebody where I feel like he's so explosive and he's so fun to watch, but I also think that it could be his weakness, as we saw with Diego Lopez getting caught. Arnold Allen has not been the most active fighter. His last fight was in July of 2024, so it's been a year and a half with him out of the cage, and he was not necessarily on a good run before that. So I don't know if I can really put a lot of stock in him winning this fight when Silva has been so active. He's had 3 fights in the UFC the past 2 years. I don't know. I'm getting behind Silva, but there's also something about Arnold Allen that I really like. His confidence, I feel like, and they said he's been a mainstay in the top 10 for 5 years, I think they said. There's something about him that I do really like going into this fight, and something about John Silva that kind of rubs me the wrong way, just in their heads, the way that they're coming in here confidence-wise. John Silva coming in, doing his thing, selling the fight, but being a little bit too much of a character, and Arnold Allen just being that nice guy who's got a plan. So this one could go either way. I want to get behind John Silva. He is the favorite here, but and looking at recent forms, you definitely have to pick him. But I would not be surprised if Arnold Allen pulls off an upset. On to the prelims, Umar Nurmagomedov versus Davison Figueiredo. I don't know how this is not on the main card. You can argue this should be co-main event in a way. I think that Umar, if he wins, he may be in a better position than anyone for the title, and that's what is the same division as the co-main event. But yeah, again, I see this fight going one way, and that is a dominant decision victory for Umar Nurmagomedov. I think that he is still a world-class wrestler, and he's still a phenomenal athlete. Sure, he got beat by Merab, but that was a very close fight, 3-2. I think that Merab versus Umar 2 is a great rematch, but I don't find him to be not competitive. I find him to be more than competitive with anybody else in the division, where I don't think that they're competitive with him. And Figgy hasn't been on. He's got I think he's on a 1 or 2 fight win streak, something like that. I don't think that he beats Umar, not even close. So I think Umar probably shuts him out 30-27. Before that, you're going to have Oteba Gauthier fighting Andre Puliev. That's a look. Atiba Gauthier is a -1,000 favorite. No offense to Puliev, but Atiba Gauthier is a rising star in the UFC. Look, if there was a Prospect of the Year award for 2025, it would go to him. I'm expecting another highlight reel knockout from Gauthier on to the next. Nikita Krylov versus Modestas Bukauskas. Really fun fight, that one. I'm going to pick Bukauskas on that one. It could go either way. He's a slight favorite. So we'll see. Alex Perez, Charles Johnson. Opening or at the end of the early prelims. That's a great matchup. I kind of want to side with Charles Johnson. He just always seems to find a way, really, both these guys, but that should be a good matchup. Michael Johnson versus Alexander Hernandez. Josh Hokett, he's back versus Denzel Freeman. Not even a huge favorite in that one, so we'll see if he has another crazy post-fight speech if he wins. This is going to be a very fun UFC card, top to bottom. I think it's one of the most stacked cards. This will end up being one of the most stacked cards of the year, and we're kicking it off right, this new deal. Okay, moving on from there, let's talk about some boxing. And we're not going to talk about Zuffa Boxing right now. We're going to start with Raymond Muratalla, Andy Cruz, because this is a great matchup, and I feel like it's one that's really gone under the radar, and I don't know if you want to blame that on the promotion. I don't know if you want to blame that on these two guys not necessarily being the biggest names and the biggest promoters. You know, they don't have huge fan bases. They're not insane characters like somebody like Ryan Garcia or not Mario Barrios, but Ryan Garcia is. And we're going to talk about his press conference today too. But yeah, I mean, as for how I see this fight going, I feel like everyone has just been kind of writing off Muratalla. And don't get me wrong, I'm picking Andy Cruz to win this fight. I think by a decision. But I do think that Muratalla is still a world-class fighter, and I think he's going to be competitive in there. I see this being like a 7-5 kind of fight, maybe 8-4. You know, and there's also there's a potential that Cruz could shut him out, and there's a very strong potential Muratalla could beat him. I'm not writing that off at all. Again, this is what I would think of as a 60-40 fight in favor of Cruz, maybe 65-35. I just think, the guy's an Olympian. He's a very precise and polished boxer, and Muratalla is great. He's got a lot of power, but some of his performances recently haven't blown me away. He shut out Abdullayev. Before that, he had a really early knockout win. But before those two wins, he went life and death with Tevin Farmer, and he went life and death with Zolazani and Donjeni. Not necessarily what you want to hear from the now world champion. This is his first true world title fight, too, as when he won the interim title over against Abdullayev, he then got upgraded after Loma retired. So he's never actually had a true world title fight, but it's a great matchup. I'm picking Andy Cruz to win by decision. And the winner of this, you are primed for a big fight. You're at IBF lightweight world champion. You've got so many other champions out there. Shakur holds the WBC. He's likely to move up, and then you'll get he is moving up. Well, he's likely to stay there, and Jadir Herrera will get upgraded. But then it looks like it'll be Floyd Schofield fighting Lucas Body or Lamont Roach. By the way, Lamont Roach says he's pushing for that Schofield title fight. He wants it, which I'd love to hear. So I'd hope that it ends up being Schofield Roach as opposed to Schofield Body. And then, of course, Abdullah Mason holds the WBO, so kind of like this next generation of lightweights are coming through, and I'm really excited for that. On that undercard, Khalil Coe and Jesse Hart, they've been selling the shit out of their fight. I do think this is another big jump up in competition for Khalil Coe. That being said, I don't think Jesse Hart is the same Jesse Hart he used to be. I'm picking Khalil Coe to win this fight, as it really did seem like his first fight with Gallegos in 2024 was kind of a fluke. In the rematch, he dominated him, and he just wasn't really properly conditioned for that first fight. He was sick, he was injured, it was something like that, and he turned it around. So I am expecting a good performance for Coe. I think that could steal the show. Israel Madrimov back in action. He's going to be fighting Luis David Salazar, who's 20 wins, 1 loss, but don't really know too much about him as a fighter. looking at his record, this guy has never fought above a scheduled 8-rounder, which you don't like to see. I think Israel Madrimov beats him, and I think he probably stops him. You got to get the confidence back. Madrimov off 2 very good efforts in losses against Crawford and Ortiz. Nothing to complain about or anything or be ashamed of, but you do just want to get that solid win back under your feet. And then, another fight for Omari Jones, likely to go 5-0, 5 knockouts against Jerome Baxter. I mean, 7-0, another undefeated opponent for him, so that should be a good matchup. And then you're also going to get Zaquin Moses opening up the card. They do also have Ronnie Alvarez and Capo Gallegos on the card, but I believe they're going to be on the prelims, and those will not be televised, which I don't love, but it is what it is. Okay, moving on from there, let's talk about Zuffa Boxing because we've got so much to talk about regarding this new organization and all the news regarding it recently. So before we get into all the other news regarding this event and its debut, let's just talk about the fight itself. It's at the Apex. I thought that the actual setup looks decent, but, barely any seats in there. It's going to be a very quiet atmosphere. We'll see if they can find a way to make it loud. But, yeah, main event, Callum Walsh, Carlos Ocampo. I watched the press conference, and we'll talk about a lot of what Dana White said at that press conference, but this fight, not too much heat to it. And, for what Zuffa Boxing is trying to be, which is a UFC, version of boxing, I guess, where it's going to be all under one roof and it's going to be all 50-50 fights. This is very much a traditional boxing main event. You've got Callum Walsh, who is undefeated. He stands at 15-0, I believe 11 knockouts, and he's fighting Carlos Ocampo, who is 38-3 with 26 knockouts. So Ocampo's definitely got some power to him, but when you look at Ocampo, I mean, he's been knocked out 3 times. Granted, who's he been knocked out by? Errol Spence, or Tim Tszyu, and Sebastian Fundora did not knock him out, so I'm wrong there. I thought he also got knocked out by Fundora. He did not. Lost by decision to him. But still, it stands the same that this is a guy who's been battle-tested. He's fought in the elite of the elite, but he's no longer at that level, and Callum Walsh is going to use him as a name on a record. Granted, this is a big jump up in competition for Callum Walsh, as was Fernando Vargas Jr., but that, or at least on paper, but that was a complete whitewash. It was a one-sided fight. So, yeah, we'll see what happens here, but I am picking a Walsh to win, potentially inside the distance, but I think it's important that he puts on a show. He was the poster boy for Dana White's boxing before Zuffa Boxing. He's the only guy I'd ever had an investment in. He was also the poster boy for 360 Promotions, which looks like it may be gone. I noticed Tom Loeffler was the guy at the weigh-in today doing the face-offs, and I don't know if his promotion is still a thing because they have not been promoting any of these fights. Advertising on social media, which makes sense. It's a Zuffa Boxing show. It's not their show, and it's not a co-promotion. Now, I am curious. He's given up Callum Walsh, Kane Sandoval, and Omar Trinidad on the show, as well as we know Sergey Boachuk is likely to fight soon. In fact, it could be next week, which we'll talk about in a second. But I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of his other younger fighters end up on those cards, and we don't really get the UFC Fight Pass events anymore. And it's just his stable just goes into Zuffa Boxing. They bought him out. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, I think Walsh wins that fight inside the distance. It's at middleweight now. He's now a middleweight because they're not doing the in-between divisions, which I don't hate, but I also don't love that they're, making guys move up. Co-main event is going to be Misael Rodriguez versus Austin Deonda. Both these guys are undefeated. I don't know if this should be co-main event. I'm looking forward to it. I'm picking Rodriguez. I mean, he just seems like the more confident pick here. It really could go either way. I'm not too familiar with either of them. I don't know if I've ever seen Rodriguez fight. I think I saw Deonda fight one time on a Keyshawn Davis undercard. Other than that, nothing really. But yeah, I'm picking Rodriguez to beat him. And then the fight I'm honestly most excited for on the card, Kane Sandoval versus Julian Rodriguez. This is a really, really good matchup, I think. It's very intriguing to me. Rodriguez, obviously, coming off a great win over Avius Griffin on the Jake Paul Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. undercard in June. That was a big upset. That was a phenomenal fight. And I'm glad that he got an opportunity to come on here and sign with Zuffa Boxing. Kane Sandoval, an undefeated big puncher, very similar in record to Callum Walsh. Except he is a welterweight, formerly super lightweight, but again, making a move up. And yeah, I think this is a really, really good matchup. Again, I'm picking Kane Sandoval. I think that he just is going to be the better fighter. I think that he's got more in the tank. I think he's got more power. But I think that I think it's going to be a scrap. Rodriguez is not going to go down easy, but I think Sandoval is going to beat him, and his O will not be snatched the same way that Griffin's was. Now, on the undercard, on the prelims, you're going to have Omar Trinidad, which I find interesting. He's on the prelims and not the main card. Only 3 fights on the main card. He's going to be fighting Max Ornelas. Trinidad's last performance, not great. It was a draw with Lorenzo Parr, so definitely needs to correct some stuff tonight, or tomorrow night, I should say. But I think that he beats Ornelas. Floyd Diaz back in action fighting Guillermo Gutierrez. Was with Top Rank, now with Zuffa. I think Diaz beats him over 8. And then some good match. Emiliano Cardenas versus Marcus Cortez Harris, 9-0 versus 7-1. And then Robert Merriweather III versus Cesar Correa, 9-0 versus 5-0. And then Troy Nash versus Jacob Ramos, 5-0-1 versus 4-0. So a lot of undefeated fighters on this card going up against each other, which we love to see. That is really, really just good to see. And honestly, for what we've been told, this is kind of seeming like it's going to be not every fight on this card, but a lot of it is young, up-and-coming fighters fighting each other and seeing who's going to come out on top. And that is the UFC model. And I'm glad to see that, this may not be the biggest event, but we're coming out and we're doing what we said we were going to do. And we're going to have competitive fights from the opening bell. No losing records on these shows, just straight up dogs fighting, which I like. Now, with it being said, maybe it's not all that we were heard. I do just want to mention that Dana White was asked about Jaya Pataya. He still seems very vague on the actual rules regarding the sanctioning bodies, if they'll allow them. But from what it sounds like, and he even admitted it was vague, but then didn't really give a real answer. From what it sounds like, they're going to allow Jaya Pataya to defend his title and unify on Zuffa Boxing shows, I'm sure, for the time being, because they understand that they're pulling guys in from the middle of their careers while they're champions, and they still have things that they want to do. They still have goals, and they do need to have a little bit of a transitionary period where, look, they're not going to have the biggest events right now. They're not going to have the biggest fights, but they need to do the best they can. And if they're going to do that by having an IBF title fight on their card, then that's what they're going to do. So I'm okay with that. I just hope that, and actually I like that because I don't like the idea of introducing another title into boxing, but I just hope that they stick to their words with what they were going to do, and we can fully invest into this Zuffa Boxing idea and not, end up, I don't want to say scamming, but end up not delivering on what they promised the UFC fans more so. As for the Ali Act, a lot of progress. I believe that there was a vote. It was like 30-4 to go ahead and advance that to a vote where they're going to, approve or deny, whether it goes ahead. And I think that it will go ahead and they'll make changes. Now, what's interesting in the changes is that it will allow, promotion like Zuffa Boxing to hold their own title if they choose. And it will also mean that sanctioning bodies are not allowed to have more than one champion per division, which I love, because right now the WBA has like 3 heavyweight champions, or at least for one division they have that. It's ridiculous and it needs to be fixed. So if we can figure out a way around that, sure. And they said they will only have an interim championship if it is very, very much needed. There was somebody who was sick and they cannot fight. Not just like Virgil Ortiz. Oh, yeah, hold this interim championship that you've held for 2 years and you're never going to get the chance to actually challenge for the real title, and you're just going to defend this. Like, that's what it is in boxing, So I like the idea of them, bringing the hammer down and saying, no, you can't do that. Again, I just hope the fighters don't get screwed over here. I really do. I mean, especially with talk about UFC, Justin Gaethje saying, there's no pay change in this new deal. I'm getting the paid as I was before, same as I was before. Now, Dana did go on and say that, look, we offered him more money. He didn't respond, which I'm like, okay, fair. But, it is what it is. Now, Zuffa Boxing, the broadcast team has been announced as well, and we're actually going to talk about something else very exciting with them. They also announced their second event, the main event at least, and then we'll talk about that as well as what's on the undercard, or at least rumored to be on the undercard. But for the talent of this, we're going to have on commentary team, it'll be Joe Tessitore, who's on Top Rank. Really excited to see him back in boxing. He's fantastic. Max Kellerman, I didn't love him on the Canelo Crawford show, but hopefully he's better. Andre Ward. And then also on here, you got Antonio Tarver, Mike Coppinger, Mark Kriegel, who's good to see. I mean, it seems like they got a lot of some pundits, some guys from their Ring Magazine show. So, there definitely is a connection between Ring Magazine and Turkey and this new Zuffa Boxing League. Skipper Kelp as an analyst, Heidi Andro reporting, Molly Durham as host. I don't know if I'm or Molly Quirim, excuse me. as familiar with them. And then Joe Martinez is the ring announcer. No surprise there, as he obviously does a lot of the UFC stuff. But yeah, I mean, it seems like they've got a really strong commentary crew, and I'm excited. Now, main event for Zuffa Boxing 2, it's going to be next Sunday, February 1st. So they're going to do, we'll have UFC on Saturdays and then Zuffa Boxing on Fridays and Sundays, unless there is no card or there's no UFC on Saturday. Like I think Valentine's Day, for example, I believe we're supposed to have Zuffa Boxing 3 on that date. In fact, I'm actually looking at Dana White's. Oh, wait, never mind. I was looking at Dana White's promoter thing on BoxRec, and they have him promoting an event March 6th at the Fontainebleau, and I was like, oh, wait, this is new. And then I see it's a Power Slap event, which I did not know was on BoxRec. But then I guess it is. Anyways, main event for next week is going to be Jose Valenzuela, who's long reported to be a part of this new Zuffa Boxing League, former world champion. He's going to be fighting Diego Torres, who stands at 22 wins, 1 loss. 19 of those 22 wins coming by way of knockout. Only lost to Raymond Muratalla. I mean, it seems like a pretty good fighter there, and that's a really strong main event. And what's being reported is that the co-main event is going to be Sergey Bohachuk versus Radza Butayev. Bohachuk back in action. Butayev, I believe, had 1 loss to Manta Stanionis, and that's it. So not bad there. And then Radivaj Kaladzik, the Hot Rod, versus Oleksandr Gvozdyk, which is another great matchup. I mean, that card is definitely better than this one we've got. That's a 3-pack of really good competitive fights. And look, if they're going with this strong of a schedule, look at U.S. boxing. Look at the landscape right now. Golden Boy just lost his TV deal, presumably. Besides the Ring Magazine event, they had 1 card this year with no scheduled shows upcoming. Top Rank, no TV deal. Although Xander Zayas Baru, we can just talk about it now. It was announced that is going to be on Top Rank Classics Fast channel. So what we've been doing recently with like the Espinoza card and the Tension card and the Michaela Mayer fight, it's going to be on Tubi and Roku channel and all that. Yeah, not the best. Not the best. They were still not able to get a TV deal. It's been 6 months. This is their first event that they're actually the main promoter behind, and still no TV deal. So really, really unfortunate to see, but at least it's free. Anybody can watch this completely for free. But anyways, they've still got no TV deal. Only 1 show planned. You've got PBC, who barely do any shows on Prime Video, mostly pay-per-view, and no show scheduled. And then you have Matchroom, who, as for their U.S. calendar, they've got 2 shows on the calendar, both very strong events. Honestly, probably the top promoter in America right now is Zuffa Boxing. Looks like they've got 3 shows planned. 1 tomorrow, 1 announced for Sunday, next Sunday, and then another one, like we said, rumored for February 14th, or at least reported. I think that's pretty much confirmed, just hasn't been announced. They've got a very strong schedule, and they're putting on good fights. So I'm curious to see how quickly it grows, and if it does, it could be a problem for a lot of the traditional boxing that we've been used to for years, and I don't know if that's a bad thing. So I'm really, really excited to see where this whole story develops, and I cannot wait for Zuffa. But I'm excited for UFC, and I'm excited for Muratalla Cruz, but just to see Zuffa Boxing kick off is probably the thing I'm most looking forward to this weekend, because it is just such a fascinating story. Okay, another fight this weekend. Tito Sanchez back in the ring fighting Jesus Ramirez. I'm probably going to try and watch this one. Maybe not live because it's going to be on the same time as Zuffa 1. But good to see Tito Sanchez get back in the ring. He's a very good prospect turned contender. Again, 122, not the deepest division. If they can't get a fight for Jorge Chavez, make an in-house fight with him and Tito Sanchez. Or even have him fight Manny Flores. I don't know. It's the same division. But, yeah, excited to see that one tomorrow night. On from there, let's talk about Deontay Wilder, Derek Chisora. This came out of the blue, and there's some really interesting tidbits about it. So it's being reported for April 4th at the O2 Arena in London, and I just want to say the fight itself, absolutely no problems with. It seems like Wilder versus Usyk is at least kind of on the back table right now. It seems like IVB Boxing, which I don't think is going to go the way that they're saying that they're going to be able to pull off this event. It seems like they do not have Usyk Wilder planned even for it. That was just some talk. And Wilder says apparently Wilder wants a warm-up fight in Derek Chisora, which I don't know if that's a good idea because I think Derek Chisora beats Deontay Wilder right now. I think most people do. And Chisora has still got it at his age, and this will be his last fight, I presume. At least I hope it is. Speaking of Usyk, I forgot to mention it, but there are rumors that he is in talks with Dana White. And if Dana White is able to sign Usyk, that is going to be seriously disrupt boxing. I mean, already signing Jai was huge, but signing Usyk and even doing Usyk versus Opataya, that is a huge, huge steal to take the number one fighter in the sport, the heavyweight champion. It would be massive. I can't even begin to imagine what would happen if Dana White got his hands on Oleksandr Usyk. Even if it's at the end of his career, it just shows what a power play that is. And, I mean, Usyk's never been attached to a major promoter. That could change in his last few fights. Again, but Usyk wants his money, and I don't know if Dana will bring that. Anyways, as for Wilder Chisora, I really like this matchup. It's Unk versus Unk. They're both at the end of their careers. Why not? They're both fun, big punchers. Let's just go out one last time and have some fun. Now, apparently, I was thinking initially, I'm like, okay, well, we know that Chisora is with Queensberry, or at least was, and Deontay Wilder seemingly has a good relationship with Frank Warren. That's probably where this is going to be, right? His own pay-per-view, at least in the UK, if even that. And then it comes out, no, this is actually going to be a Sky Sports pay-per-view, so they're getting back into boxing, promoted by Callie Sauerland. And that's really interesting because Wasserman has not been doing big fights at all for years. They've been on Channel 5, although we know that deal was eventually going to end. It may have already ended, I don't know. And there were rumors a few months back that Wasserman were in talks with Sky Sports, and I was like, what is Wasserman going to do on Sky Sports? Like, they barely have any stable. Well, if they're able to get this fight off the ground on Sky, like, that's a big splash to make on Sky Sports, and then they solidify themselves as like, yeah, we're back at the top table of UK boxing, world boxing even. So, yeah, really, really interesting to see if they can pull that off. And the word is that Vidal Riley would be co-main event on here. Obviously, they just signed him to MF Pro, and Misfits and Wasserman is all kind of one family. So I would expect that if they are able to get this fight signed, you're going to have Wilder versus Chisora, probably guys like Harlem Eubank, Michael Conlon, and then other, pro fighters from Misfits like Vidal Riley, Ty Mitchell, H2O Silva, Amir Anderson. There's going to be a Wasserman X Misfits Pro event. I don't know how it's going to be promoted, but yeah, just so odd and very surprising that it's Sauerland behind this. But you know what? I love it. I really like the Sauerlands, and good for them to finally get something big going. I just want to talk about this press conference we had today with Ryan Garcia and Mario Barrios. It seems like the chaotic Ryan Garcia is back. I think that's a good thing because, man, is the guy funny and able to sell a fight. He was so entertaining during that press conference and made it not boring. I loved all the talk with Joe Goosen, who obviously used to train Ryan Garcia, and then being a little bit kind of hurt about it, which I get. And there's a little bit of animosity there, but all handled it respectfully. I think that him and Barrios is going to be a good fight, and he's saying, look, I think this is going to be a war, and I think it will too. I hope it delivers. About this being for the WBC welterweight title, I mean, that's just such a prestigious title to put on this. And obviously, Barrios is champion. It's just wild to think because I don't know if either of these guys are considered top 10 in that division, and it's a pay-per-view main event, but it's a good fight. It's a well-matched fight. I hope that Ryan Garcia's confidence and seeming spunk for life back is not misplaced. He said, he was like, look, I'm best when you see me when I'm quiet and I'm seemingly locked in. That's not good. As you saw with my last fight, they forced me into doing that fight. I didn't really want to fight Rolly. I didn't want it, and that kind of showed on the night. I want this. I want that title. I want to beat up Mario Barrios, and that's why you're seeing me so animated, is because I'm focused like I was with Devin Haney, and that was, despite the Austrian, that was Ryan Garcia's best performance. So if he is going to come in the same way, in that unserious yet serious nature, and ready to put BTA, then that is good for him. And I'm really excited for that fight come February 21st. That press conference is going to be a lot more excited. Donn Davis has left the PFL. This comes not much as a surprise. We know that there's always been a lot of corporate restructuring, and we've just seen it in the product itself, how they are going on to, moving on from the tournament thing. They're just going to do big kind of fight nights, and I think already we're just seeing the 2026 calendar. It looks like a big improvement over last year and the years in the past. John Martin's taken over. We already know a lot of the guys at PFL have already left. I believe Pete Murray's left, Ray Sefo just left, and now Donn Davis is out. Constantly, they've done an entire washing out of that old executive staff, and the new guys have come in, and hopefully they know what they're doing. Donn Davis was the founder. He brought it up here, and I hope that we find out that, yeah, he was not doing the best things with the company, and we're able to improve from that, and not that, we just kind of worsen what was already an company. But, yeah, what's also interesting is apparently with this whole old PFL regime out and the new one in, it seems like, according to Ariel Helwani, that
whatever deal Jake Paul had with them, whatever promotional or fight deal or even investorship is done, and they are no longer really connected. Obviously, like I think 3 years ago now, Jake Paul signed with them. It was a multi-fight deal. He was going to promote. He was going to bring on fighters to the roster and, kind of try and set it up. And since then, he's done a little bit of promotion with the company. He did a photo shoot with them. He's promoted PFL a little bit. It was mainly just a thing to get at Dana White and UFC, which, by the way, Jake Paul and Dana White met at the College Football National Championship the other day, and that was just so weird to see them speaking to each other with all the beef they've had, but they were there with Trump, and so they obviously weren't going to have a scene or anything, but it was just so awkward, you could tell. And Dana White just had that look of, like, this guy, just so bizarre to see and so uncomfortable they both seemed. But anyways, yeah, I'm not surprised. PFL has not made the best deals with Jake Paul and Francis Ngannou, where they seem great, and then they both kind of get played in the end and are able to, kind of work their way out of the deal in a way, and are no longer affiliated with the company, or at least Jake Paul isn't. Francis Ngannou still is. Moving on from that, Dana White has shut down Conor McGregor and Jorge Masvidal, saying that's goofy shit. Now, I don't know who they're planning for McGregor to fight. Someone did bring up maybe it's Justin Gaethje if he wins or loses to Paddy the Baddy at the White House. McGregor's definitely in the cards. They said that, but it's not going to be against Jorge Masvidal. It's not going to be against Michael Chandler. I just don't know who it's going to be. I really don't know who it's going to be. I don't know what kind of angle they're going to try to take with it. I would assume it's somebody from the old guard, not one of these new guys. So we'll see. Arslanbek Makhmudov has been confirmed as a potential Tyson Fury opponent. Look, Makhmudov was in the runnings to fight AJ in February. Before that, fell apart with obviously the tragic incident that happened at the end of the year with AJ and his friends, Cena and Latz dying. So he's not going to fight. So Tyson Fury's looking to make his comeback, and they're like, well, why don't Makhmudov? He's available, and I would not complain at that at all. Another name potential is Andy Ruiz, who I would love to see Fury and Ruiz fight. Ruiz has got a name, and it makes sense. Now, I also saw Ruiz as a potential for Oleksandr Usyk, which I would hate to see. Ruiz has not fought in a year and a half, and that's why I'm okay with him being a warm-up fight for Fury, because I think Fury beats him, and we haven't seen Ruiz win a fight in God knows how long, probably since like 2022, I think. So I would be so mad if he fought Usyk. I'd be okay with him fighting Fury, though, for sure. The WBC have canceled their ordering of Hamza Shiraz versus Christian Mbili for the vacant super middleweight championship. I'm okay with that. I do think that was the better fight, but it seems like Hamza Shiraz is moving towards going the Diego Pacheco route for the WBO, which I don't blame him. That's an easier fight. And to me, going down the rankings, the next guy is going to be Lester Martinez, which I think makes so much sense, as they just had a draw. So make that rematch for the full title, not the interim. And then Shiraz fights Pacheco for the WBO, and there you go. And you got two options for Canelo in September in his big return. So, yeah, that's what it seems like it's going. So, not a big deal that they canceled their order. I think they just kind of realized that, or were informed that Shiraz was pursuing the WBO and not the WBC. It has seemingly been confirmed. On Topology, they now have Gary Antoine Russell versus Andy Hiraoka officially added to Barrios versus Garcia. That was obviously a big rumor that fight was going to be on that card. We also know Hitchens versus Duarte seems like it's going to be on it. So right now it's looking like we're going to have at least 3 world title fights on that one. And I think, dude, Russell versus Hiraoka is a fantastic fight, as is Hitchens versus Duarte. So 2 great 140-pound fights on that undercard. Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited for February 21st. I think it's going to be a very solid night of action at the T-Mobile Arena, and we'll just have to see what ends up happening on that date. But yeah, good fight, really really good fight added there, and I hope it is true. And I'm assuming we're going to get that announcement soon. A report that Juan Francisco Estrada versus Tenshin Nasukawa is set for April 10th in Japan. This would be Tenshin's first fight since his first loss to Takuma Inoue. And he's going to fight Estrada, who's, a former world champion, top 10 bantamweight, I think. That's a great matchup, and one that I don't know who wins that. I would maybe even favor Tenshin, but he really didn't look great against Inoue in the second half of that fight. So we'll see. I mean, Estrada is getting up there. He is, I don't know if I would call him washed, but he's not in his prime anymore. And Tenshin, former kickboxer turned boxer, but very successful in boxing mostly. I think that's a great matchup. And I'm really excited and curious, and I hope it happens. I really do. Not a lot of word on Japanese boxing lately. We know they've got the big Inoue Nakatani card planned for May, but other than that, I don't know if really any fights are on the calendar. I know Ryosuke Nishida has a eliminator in February, but that's pretty much it that I think. Oscar Valdez has officially become a free agent from Top Rank. They lose another one. I'm actually very surprised they haven't lost many fighters as I was expecting. I mean, boxers lost so many fighters when they didn't have a TV deal, and then it shifted to BBC. But yeah, Top Rank has not had one for so long. I mean, Oscar Valdez, it's not even a big loss. Like, he was at the end of his career anyways. But, it just shows another one's gone. And then lastly, Liam Smith says he was offered George Liddard for March 7th. So it seems like Matchroom's planning a show for their UK schedule on March 7th, headlined or at least in large part by George Liddard. I believe Johnny Fisher will probably be on that as well. Looks like they're going to do a London show. But yeah, I mean, that shows they want to step him up. They want to step up Liddard. And look, I think Liddard beats Liam Smith today. I think that Liam Smith is definitely a shell of his former self, but it shows that they want to put him they want to put a big name on to his resume. They want to kind of sacrifice Liam Smith for that. So they believe in him a lot. And yeah, so I hope he has a big fight still at middleweight, probably defending that British title. But that's all I've got for today's episode. Thank you all so much for listening. It's a little bit of a long one, but a lot to talk about. I'm very, very excited for this weekend's action. The most excited I've been for a fight weekend in many weekends. So I think it's going to be a good one. I hope everyone has a great weekend and enjoys it. Enjoy the fights. Thank you for listening, and peace out.